My brother framed me for stealing $30,000 and got me disowned. Now he's begging for help, but I made a move that ruined everything he built. You're a thief, Marcus. A damn thief. That's what my dad yelled as he shoved me up against the garage wall, his voice echoing through the cold concrete like thunder. My shoulder hit the wood shelf hard enough to rattle a box of old fishing gear down beside me. I didn't even get the chance to stand all the way up before he was in my face again, eyes bloodshot, lips curled like he couldn't believe I'd dare to breathe the same air. You took it. $30,000. Don't lie to me. I blinked, still stunned. What money? What are you talking about? Behind him, standing a little too straight in his stupid charcoal sweater and spotless jeans, was my older brother Eli. Arms folded, chin tilted like he was watching justice being served. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. He'd already planted the seed. I remember that morning clearer than I remember my own birthday. It was 2 weeks after I lost my job at the machine shop, laid off with half the crew when the owner's nephew took over. I'd kept it quiet. Didn't want Dad worrying, didn't want Eli smirking. I'd come by to help install a new water heater in the basement. One of those simple favors I never minded doing, even after Eli stopped lifting a finger years ago. By the time I got there, the mood was off. Mom wasn't around at a friend's, they said. And Dad barely looked at me when he opened the door. Then he brought me into the garage and dropped the bomb. The safe in his bedroom closet had been opened. $30,000 in cash gone. Eli told me you were the last one in the house yesterday, Dad growled. You needed money. I get it. But stealing from your own family? I froze. He thought I did it. No, not thought. He believed it. I didn't even know you had money in that safe, I said. My voice cracked. Why would I steal from you? Dad barked a humorless laugh. You've been desperate ever since you lost that damn job. I told you I'm figuring it out. You think I'd really rob you for that? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Eli already told him everything. About how I'd stopped taking calls. About how I snapped a few weeks ago when Dad joked about my car breaking down again. Eli said I was slipping. Spiraling. Probably thought that if he kept spinning the story long enough, it would harden into truth. And it did. I want you out, Dad said. Don't come back until you make this right. Make what right? I shouted. I didn't take your damn money. Eli stepped forward then. Just leave, Marcus. It's better if you don't drag this out. That was the part that broke me. Not the shove. Not the accusation. The fact that he was the one standing there calm and collected while my life got shredded to pieces. He framed me. And he got away with it. At least for a while. I spent that night in the back seat of my '94 Bronco with a hoodie for a pillow and a heart full of disbelief. It was February in Anchorage and my breath fogged up the windshield as I tried to wrap my head around what had just happened. 1 second I was helping Dad patch a pipe under the sink. The next I was exiled. No one called. Not even Mom. I texted her. Just once. Please tell me you don't believe him. She left me on read. I must have stared at my phone for hours. I wasn't just humiliated. I felt erased. Like I had been voted out of my own family. And all it took was one lie from the golden boy. See, Eli's always had this charm thing. Real estate license, cryptocurrency, consultant, whatever sounded good that year. He looked the part. Tailored suits, slick hair, the kind of confident handshake that made people believe he actually earned what he had. Me? I was always the guy with grease under his fingernails. A guy who fixed stuff. But I didn't fake who I was. And I didn't take what wasn't mine. Dad couldn't see that. Not when Eli handed him a convenient villain to pin his anger on. For the next year and a half, I drifted. I did freelance mechanical work, mostly through word of mouth. I kept my head down, lived out of a cheap rental on the outskirts of town, and tried to rebuild my life from scratch. I avoided social media, ignored birthdays, stopped answering cousins' texts asking what the hell happened between me and Eli. The shame sat heavy. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I couldn't prove I didn't. Eli, meanwhile, was thriving, at least online. He posted stories about mentoring young investors and growing family legacy, smiling with our dad in matching flannel shirts like they were the rugged American dream. It made me sick. But I didn't retaliate. I didn't confront him. I figured the truth had a way of leaking out eventually. And it did. It started as a whisper at a wedding. I'd shown up late more out of obligation than anything else. A distant cousin's reception. I was grabbing a beer near the back of the tent when I overheard 2 guys talking by the shrimp cocktail. Yeah, Eli's crypto thing tanked. Heard he owes a guy named Vasquez like 30 grand. The number hit me like a slap. 30,000. The same number I was accused of stealing. And suddenly, everything fell into place. That money hadn't vanished. Eli had taken it. He wasn't covering gambling debts like I'd feared. He was covering investments. His investments. He didn't just throw me under the bus. He sold me to pay for his crash. I left the wedding early. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't sleep that night either, because the question had changed. It wasn't, did he frame me? It was, what the hell am I going to do about it? The next morning, I drove to the house I hadn't seen since the day I got tossed out. Same driveway, same porch swing, but the place felt smaller somehow, like the paint had lost its shine now that the blinders were off. I wasn't sure what I was even doing there. Maybe I wanted confrontation. Maybe I just needed to see it for myself, what my life used to be. I didn't knock. Instead, I parked across the street and watched. It was early, too early for Eli to be up, unless he was coming off another all-nighter pretending to work. But Dad's truck was gone. I figured he'd be at the VFW or one of his weekly coffee shop meetups, so I took a chance and followed the route I knew by heart. Found him sitting in the corner booth of Dee Dee's diner with a plate of dry toast and a coffee that looked older than the waitress pouring it. I walked up slow. My boots stuck a little to the old linoleum floor. He looked up and I swear, for half a second he looked happy to see me. Then his jaw set like concrete. Marcus. I slid into the booth. Hey, Dad. He didn't say anything for a while. Just stared at the mug in his hand like it was the only thing holding him together. Finally, he spoke. You got something to say? I nodded. I didn't take the money. He snorted. We've been through this. Eli did. I said. He took it. For one of his crypto deals. He leaned back like I'd slapped him. But he didn't argue. That pause? That moment of hesitation? That told me everything. He told you something, didn't he? I pressed. Dad's eyes darted. His fingers curled tighter around the mug. He came to me a few months ago, he muttered. Said he made a mistake. A bad loan. Said it was temporary. You didn't ask where the money came from? I assumed. He stopped. Swallowed hard. I didn't want to believe it. He looked old. Older than I remembered. Like the weight of all the wrong choices was finally pressing down on him. You let me sleep in my truck for a month, I said, voice trembling. You let me think I was nothing. And all that time you knew. I didn't know, he snapped. I hoped I was wrong. Hope. That was his excuse. Hope that Eli wasn't a thief. That his shining sun hadn't sold out his own brother. That the narrative he built, Eli the success, Marcus the screw-up, wasn't built on a lie. You gonna tell him I know? I asked. Dad shook his head. No. He's already paying for it. I leaned in. You mean the debt? Or do you mean the mess he's about to walk into? That got his attention. What mess? I stood. You'll see. I walked out of that diner with frost biting my ears and fire in my chest. The truth was out. But it wasn't enough. Because now they needed me. They just didn't know what it would cost. I didn't hear from Eli for another 3 weeks. Then one night, around 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. I was lying on my couch with the TV on low and a bowl of cold spaghetti I never finished. I almost didn't answer, but when I saw his name, I picked up. Marcus, Eli said, voice thin, brittle. Hey, you, got a second? I didn't say anything. Look, he started again. I know you're probably still mad, but I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't serious. I let the silence stretch. He cracked first. We're in trouble. Dad and me. That got a chuckle out of me. I didn't mean to. It just slipped. Yeah, I said. What kind of trouble, Eli? He sighed, long and heavy. It's the business. The IRS sent a letter. Something about misreported income. Then the bank froze 2 of our accounts. Now I got people threatening to sue me. I mean us. I could almost hear him backpedaling in real time. You and Dad share those accounts? I asked casually. There was a pause. He co-signed a few things, yeah? Like the line of credit? Another pause. Yeah. And the house? Longer pause. Yeah. I let that sit there. Then I said, you need money. No, he said quickly. Too quickly. Not well. Maybe. It's more that we need someone who knows how to talk to these people. You were always good at that. You're calm. I nearly dropped my phone from laughing. You framed me for 30 grand, I said. And now you're calling me for financial advice? I didn't know what else to do, he said, quieter now. Marcus, I messed up. Bad. Oh, now it was a mess. When I was sleeping in my car, it was just consequences. Now that he was about to lose the house, suddenly we were brothers again. I agreed to meet the next day. Not because I forgave him, because I wanted to see just how deep the hole was, and how far he'd fall if I decided not to throw him a rope. We met at a diner just outside town, same one Dad always liked. Felt weird sitting at that chipped Formica table across from Eli, who looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was messy. Shirt wrinkled. Not the Eli I remembered. Good. He came in with a manila folder packed full of statements, receipts, and letters he clearly didn't understand. I need your help, man, he said, sliding it across. The IRS stuff, it's bad. I flipped through the paper slowly. Every page painted the same picture. Eli had been funneling money through at least 3 shell companies. One was in Dad's name. Another used the address of our childhood home. You told the bank you made 6 figures on real estate, I said, holding up one of the forms. I was, he argued. At first. Then crypto tanked, and I just... What? Kept lying. He looked down. I was gonna fix it before it got this far. They all say that, I said. And by the time this far hits, it's already too late. That's when Dad walked in. He looked tired. Worn down in a way I hadn't seen before. His eyes flicked between us, and for a second, there was guilt in them. Actual guilt? I nodded at the folder. He tell you what he did? I've seen some of it, Dad muttered. I didn't know it was this bad. I pushed the folder toward them both. This is fraud. At least 2 kinds. Maybe 3. Eli looked like he was going to throw up. So, what now? Dad asked. That was the moment. Right there. The moment I realized they were both hoping I'd do what I always did, fix it. Write the check. Make the calls. Clean it up. Be the son they discarded but still expected to save them. Instead, I leaned back and said, I have a condition. Eli stiffened. What kind of condition? I looked right at Dad. I want the house. Eli's jaw dropped. You're kidding. You can't just, Dad started, but I cut him off. You want me to fix this? To untangle the nightmare you made? I want the house. In writing. Signed over to me. You can keep living there, Dad, but it's mine. And when you're gone, he doesn't get a damn inch of it. Eli stood up, fists clenched. That house is family property. No, I said. It was your leverage when you pushed me out. Now it's your buy-in if you want me back in. They didn't say yes. But they didn't say no either. And that silence? That told me I had them. By the end of the week, Eli came crawling back with a revised deed transfer drafted through some low-rent lawyer he probably found on a coupon website. He barely looked at me as he slid the documents across my small kitchen table. This doesn't feel right, he muttered. I laughed. Did stealing 30 grand feel right? He flinched but didn't respond. I thumbed through the paperwork. Everything was there. Ownership of the house would be transferred to me. Dad would retain residency until he passed. Eli's name was scrubbed completely. Just as I wanted. Dad came by that night to sign. He didn't say much. Just stood by the door, hat in hand like a kid waiting to be scolded. You sure about this? He asked as I passed him the pen. You weren't sure about me, I said. I think we're even. He signed. And just like that, the house I grew up in, the one I was thrown out of like garbage, was mine. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. Over the next few days, I started unraveling Eli's mess. I made calls, negotiated with creditors, flagged the IRS with corrected forms, and helped Dad set up a legitimate payment plan. Eli followed me around like a lost dog, watching as I did what he never could, take responsibility. The irony was almost poetic. But the more I untangled, the clearer it became he hadn't just made bad investments. He'd stolen from more than just family. He'd cooked books, manipulated people, taken out loans in other names. He was drowning. And the only reason he reached out to me? Because no one else would touch him. The final straw came the night I caught him sneaking into Dad's study. I walked in to find Eli rifling through a locked drawer with a screwdriver. What the hell are you doing? I asked. He froze, guilt all over his face. Dad's insurance forms, I thought maybe. No, I snapped. You thought there was money. Again. He didn't deny it. He just sat down and put his head in his hands. Marcus. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I didn't say anything. Because I knew. And that terrified him. That night I made my decision. I wasn't just going to bail him out. I was going to make sure he never had the power to do this to anyone again. The next morning, I met with a contact of mine, Lana, a sharp-witted CPA who worked with one of the regional accounting firms. We'd overlapped on a few side gigs and she owed me a favor. I slid Eli's paperwork across her desk and said one thing. Tell me what's prosecutable. She raised an eyebrow, started scanning, and 15 minutes later, she whistled low. Oh, this idiot's cooked, she said. Multiple tax violations, identity fraud, and 2 loans tied to a dead LLC? If the IRS doesn't get him, the bank will. I nodded. And if someone tipped them off anonymously? She smiled. Then it'd happen a lot faster. I walked out with a USB drive full of scanned documents and a clear conscience. That night, I sat in my truck across from the old house. My house now. Lights were on. Dad was watching TV in the living room. Eli's car was gone. I waited. And at midnight, I uploaded everything: IRS tip line, bank fraud department, and a digital envelope to a reporter I knew from high school who'd just written a piece on white-collar crime in Alaska. No names attached. Just facts. The fallout started 3 days later. Dad called me in a panic. The bank just froze my account again, he said. They said there's an active investigation. I stayed quiet. He kept talking. They're asking about Eli. About shell companies. They mentioned the deed transfer. I could hear it in his voice, fear, and something else. Realization. You knew, he said softly. I did, I replied. And now so do they. That night, Eli showed up at my door. He looked destroyed, eyes sunken, stubble like he hadn't bothered pretending in days. He stormed into my apartment like he had a right. You did this, he barked. You sold me out. No, I said calmly. You sold me out. 2 years ago. I just returned the favor. He paced, breathing hard. I could go to jail. I shrugged. Maybe you should. Dad's gonna hate you for this. I stepped closer. Dad hated me when he thought I stole from him. I survived it. You? You might not. Eli stood there frozen. And in that moment I saw it, the part of him that wasn't slick or charming. Just scared. Small. The kid who had to cheat to win. I didn't pity him. But I saw him clearly for the first time. Eli didn't call again after that night. Not to threaten, not to apologize, not to beg. I thought that might be the end of it until I drove past the old house a week later and saw a sheriff's cruiser parked out front. I didn't stop. But later that day, Dad called. He sounded tired. Broken. They served a warrant this morning, he said. Took Eli's computer. His files. Everything. I waited. I didn't want to believe it, he said. Even after you told me. I thought he'd pull it together. Me too, I said honestly. There was a long pause. Then Dad said something I hadn't heard from him in years. I'm sorry, Marcus. For what I said. For what I didn't say. It didn't fix everything. But it cracked the wall. Thanks, I said. The official charges came 2 weeks later. Wire fraud. Tax evasion. Identity theft. They gave him a chance to settle, but the damages were stacked too high, and his crypto holdings weren't worth the imaginary wallets he stored them in. Eli pled out. 5 years minimum. I didn't go to the sentencing. Neither did Dad. But the house? I moved in. I repainted the front room, gutted the basement, turned the garage into a proper workshop. Sometimes I'd catch Dad sitting out on the porch, coffee in hand, looking out at the road like he was waiting for the past to come driving back up the driveway. But he never asked me to fix anything again. And I never offered. One afternoon, while organizing some of Eli's old boxes, I found a birthday card he'd written to me years ago, before everything. We were maybe 16. Inside it said, "To the best little brother, even if I never say it. You're the only guy I trust." Funny how lies feel different once you know the ending. I threw it away. 6 months passed. The house was quiet most days. Peaceful, even. I'd replaced the busted porch swing with a new one, stained it myself. Planted a line of hydrangeas out back, the kind Mom used to love. Dad stopped by sometimes, always unannounced. Once he brought over a box of tools that used to be his. Said I'd probably make better use of them now. It wasn't a grand apology, but it didn't need to be. We sat on the porch one evening and watched the sun dip low behind the trees. He told me about his father and how he'd spent most of his life trying to live up to him. And how he'd passed that same weight on to me. I should have seen what Eli was doing, he said. Should have listened to you. I nodded. We both should have. He left not long after. But before he walked down the steps he turned and said, "I'm proud of the man you've become, Marcus." That stuck. Eli wrote from prison. A letter came, hand-addressed. Inside, a single page. Apology, mostly. Long-winded, full of excuses at first. But at the bottom he said something I hadn't expected. I didn't just screw up. I envied you. Always calm. Always working. Always enough. I hated it because I wasn't. I still don't know who I am without a shortcut. I didn't write back. Some days I still think about what it might have looked like if he hadn't lied. If Dad had believed me. If we were all just sitting around the grill laughing like some kind of normal family. But then I look around the place I've built and I breathe easier. This version? It's real. It's quiet, it's earned, and it's mine. I no longer carry the need to be the one who fixes everything. I just carry peace. And that I've learned is worth everything they tried to take.